Welcome, Crossroads family. Good to see you today. I am here today with Bryan Ries, pastor of Crossway Church in Franklin, and he is new, not brand new, but he's got some good stuff going on at Crossway, and also this is a replant situation. So. This is kind of a getting to know the pastor as well as learning more about replant. But Bryan, let's just jump right in, man. Tell us about yourself, your family, background, and basically how God called you to the ministry.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris, for the opportunity to kind of share what God's doing and a little bit about Crossway and how God brought this whole God story together. So appreciate that. Yeah, 44-year-old guy, married. It'll be 25 years in January. So we got married young at 20, but my wife Angel and I have five kids. Our oldest Andrew is a student at Cedarville University in Ohio, and then we've got all the other four, all teenagers. So we've got from 13 years up to 20 years old, five kids. So three boys, two girls, and so yeah, I kind of called to the ministry as a fresh out of high school, kind of summer camp to my freshman year of college. Kind of called to the ministry and have served in various ways, youth and music ministry. And my wife and I served raising boys at a children's home in Tampa, Florida for a couple of years, and then came back and planted our first church in Edinburgh back in 2008. We planted Blue River Baptist Church down in Edinburgh, Indiana. And after being there 5 years, transitioned that to a new pastor. And we were going to head to the mission field. We were going to do church planting in Thailand. And then my wife's health kind of closed that chapter of ministry for us. And we didn't know what God was doing next. And so for us, we had been asked to pray about planting a church. And so we planted a Community Baptist church here in Franklin. It'll be going on 8 years ago. It would be this fall, but so 7 years ago. And we just were an independent Baptist background. And so when we planted here, suffice it to say, I guess I wasn't wearing a suit and tie anymore. And we were not just doing hymns and piano, and I'm not against any of that whatsoever. But for us, just some differences in our philosophy and style of ministry and approach to ministry caused us kind of just to be on an island here with our new plant and from rental place to rental place to rental place around town here in Franklin for years, and a lot of renting other churches on Sunday afternoons. And that led us to renting on a Sunday afternoon a church called Open Door Fellowship, which we'll get to tell the story of here in a little bit. But so we rented this church's facility on Sunday afternoons around their services as part of our journey. And so we were really, I've been a church planter in my ministry life now twice. And we were at a place where we came upon the circumstances of this replant really unexpectedly. So I kind of stopped there, but just enjoyed serving the Lord all these years of our life, and primarily been in church planting. But this has been my first foray into replanting, and it's a different animal.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. So the planting situation, and then contrasting that with replant. There are some similarities, but there are some differences. What kind of drew you to the possibilities of replant?
Yeah, so as Community Baptists, again, we were bouncing around place to place renting, and we were doing it alone. And we knew if we were going to continue and see this church flourish, and thrive, we needed to find connection, and we needed to find community. We needed to find us as leaders of this church a brotherhood to connect with. And you and I really had met several times
Oh,
over
yeah.
the years, and so we had explored and looked, but we're really kind of still independent. And so we were having discussions internally with our leaders at Community Baptist about replanting and finding a connection, a community with a broader network and other local churches, and replanting as Crossway Bible Church. And so we were having those conversations, and we were out to lunch one Sunday. It was a late lunch, and one of the members of this church that we had rented a year prior, Open Door Fellowship, was there for lunch, and we walked over to talk to Miss Della and her family, and so we were catching up a little bit, and she said, "Well, did you hear about the church?" And she was speaking of Open Door Fellowship, and I had seen that the pastor that was here had moved on, and they had an interim pastor at the time, but I said, I know you have an interim pastor. The pastor had left, but she goes, "Yeah, we've been." Advised to replant. And I think you were a part of those
Wow.
discussions with them, and kind of came in during that season and had kind of at the end of the day advised them, hey, maybe replanting the church is a path forward for you. So she was telling us this at the pizza place over lunch, and I left, and I just kept thinking about that conversation and mulling it over. And I decided I'm going to connect with this interim pastor and just talk to him. And so I reached out to the interim pastor, who was Rick Porter, who was over at Highland Lakes, and he was here on Sundays filling in as an interim pastor at the time. And he set up a meeting with you and the Sin City missionary at the time, and himself, and then myself and our lay pastor, assistant pastor at Community, to kind of discuss, maybe God might be doing something here to bring the folks that were here. I think at the time they were down to maybe 15 people in the congregation, obviously more of a senior age demographic congregation. And we were a group of about 35 to 40 people my age, mainly, and kids, so teens and kids, and had an affinity for one another. We appreciated one another. I'd spoken for them, and they knew us, and things like that from our time renting here. But I had said to you guys at that lunch, I said, are they ready for this?
Mm.
Like, if we come together and we replant this church together, are they ready? Because I had my doubts. We had discussed a few things in the past, and they didn't seem at all ready for a path forward that would involve a whole lot of change. And Rick said, they're ready. He was selling there, more than ready. And I was like, well, I think I need to talk to him myself. So we set up a meeting on a Wednesday night to come to the building and sit down with everybody and discuss. And I left that meeting and went home, and was talking to my wife, Angel, and I said, I am shocked at how ready they seem. They seem excited. They know it's going to take some change. They know it's going to be, things may be different, but just the vision for a future, they seem excited, about it. And I think they're ready. And so we just kept kind of just having those conversations. We ended up having some services together, and doing a Bible study together on Wednesday nights and things like that. And it just kept going from there. And we started an assessment process with Send to replant, potentially here, and plant if it didn't work out. But started our all of our assessment process there, and just kept taking one step at a time forward, and really just felt the Lord affirm that this is what he was doing.
Amen.
And I mean, needless to say, probably wouldn't surprise anybody here. The verbal affirmation of readiness for replanting, and when the rubber hits the road, stepping through the changes, that's a different story. And but by the grace of God, I think we've really
Yeah.
we've made it through. God's doing some cool things here.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, that really is. I was gonna, I was gonna affirm that, in the sense of that, because we, on the other side of the conversation, we were working hard to try to prepare them, for what this might look like, because
Yeah,
most churches in that situation, at first, there's, resistance, in the sense of because it's unknown. They don't know, they don't understand. And then when we present the opportunity, it's also part of it is having strong conversations that, we first of all, we love you and care for you, and we know that you love your church, and for the sake of the gospel and for the future, replanting is really the best path. And so, and walking through those things, and just like you said, there is a difference between saying yes, because of course, when we've presented it to him, like, well, yes, that's what we want. But what does that mean? So, why don't you share what does that mean? I mean, for people that aren't familiar with replanting, what does it
yeah.
mean to replant?
That's a great question. And I will say one of the most helpful things that I ever kind of worked through to understand the process was a podcast episode of Revitalize and Replant, with Mark Clifton. And there were a couple other men, and it was like a panel discussion, recorded live at a replant event that discussed the different types of replanting. And that was incredibly helpful to discern a little bit more about what type of replant would be needed in our context. So, um, and I will say one of the most helpful things, obviously, you need to discern like where are the people, the congregation ultimately at the end of the day, are the ones who make the decision as to whether they're going to proceed forward with replanting or not. But so some of that is determined on the readiness and the understanding of the people. But the other thing that Mark Clifton would bring up in that episode was the amount of runway, that the church has might determine the path of replanting, of what that looks like going forward and what needs they have to get there. If the runway is short, then a revitalization may not be the right best way forward, because they'll run out of runway before they get where they need to get for the church to have some momentum and vitality to keep going. So, and that could be multiple things. It could be people, obviously in that demographic. Jesus is calling his saints home, and they may not have the time that people that are in the congregation, their brothers and sisters that have been here with them, are going to be with the Lord, and so there may be, that's a factor as far as how much timeline they've got. And then the other would be probably things like finances, and is a big one. So if here again, if really they probably had here, if things continued as was, my estimation would be a year and a half, and they would be out of funds, necessitating a closing of the doors,
Closing, yeah.
and potentially. So, I mean, if they were funding a pastor, if they had no pastor and somebody was just filling the pulpit, gratis, then they could make it longer. But if you're funding any type of ministry leader here, interim or part time or whatever, that eventually in that path, you run out of runway at some point in time financially, just because the income and of that demographic and the amount they can give is and they're, I mean, again, generous and sacrificial, but as much as you try, it just can't perpetuate financially, keeping the doors going and funding a pastor. So anyway, all that to say, here, the replant, what I would describe is what it is for our situation, we had myself as a replanter. Again, obviously, we went through the full process and did get approved at assessment to replant with NAM and Sun Network. But so we had some funding coming in, but what really was, we had leadership. We had myself and then our lay assistant pastor as part of Community Baptist, and then we had our core group of people, that were with us as part of that church, and you had the congregation here. The replant process that we went through, to describe it, is we took everything, and the way we described it was we went under the soil for a while. And so we kind of took all our social media, all our website presence down, and we just essentially, the process we did is we ultimately did close down both congregations and dissolve both entities. But it may be different for everybody else's situation, but we just went underground, as we called it, under the soil. And we came together. We kept meeting every Sunday and Wednesday together. And we did what we called core team meetings. We would have about a 45-minute service. We'd sing a couple songs, bring a message, and the message would typically be themed to whatever the topic we were going to cover in our core team was. And that could be a lot of that was, building a unified identity as a congregation together. And so we were doing a lot of formational identity things, trying to get on the same page with who are we now as one group of people, and beginning to learn one another, begin to learn, like, to speak the same language and get on the same page. And then we transitioned at some point. This was just over the summer of last year. So June, July, and August of 2025, we were meeting every week, but we covered the sign and we just went dark for a while and got on the same page. Then we transitioned at some point in over time where we would have the 45-minute service, and then we were doing serve team development, where we were preparing, one of these days here soon, we're opening these doors to our city. How can we be ready to minister to them together? And so we did core team development of identity, serve team development for ministry, and we were doing that over that 3-month span of time. And then our last Sunday before, what we called our launch Sunday, the Sunday before, we solely did a day of prayer and fasting. And we gathered together for corporate prayer. We fasted together, and some people went out and even did some prayer walking, and we just sought the Lord the Sunday before launch Sunday. And we launched on September 7th, this Crossway Bible Church, and again formed a new entity, and in that time, and did some refreshing of the facility, but the hard work was walking through all those things of forming an identity and figuring out one another. And almost everybody from Open Door Fellowship made it through the process. And we even added a few families along the way that we would run into, or people here would run into, and said, you should consider being a part of this. People who we felt like the Lord might be bringing together. And we added to the church even during that time, and launched as Crossroad Bible Church September 7th. So that was probably a little too wordy, but that's a little bit of the story.
No, that's good. Well, and that's one of the things, that I think you guys really did well, was making sure that you took the time to build the structure, that everything else could flourish on. And I think that's an important aspect, because I know as a planter, that's a little bit of a transition for you, just you personally, because as a planter, you're wired like, hey, we're blowing and going, we're making stuff happen, and so that's a nuance, that's a difference. You got history, and you've got people that don't understand, and you got to bring everybody along, and it's and like you said, not everybody's going to go along, and that's okay. There are people that it's just too much, and but I think you guys really were wise and did that well. Well, let's talk about that. So, as far as challenges, what were some of the challenges that you encountered along the way?
Yeah, totally. Part of it you alluded to is like when you've been a planter, um, you just kind of do things the way you feel led to do them, and you just do it, and people usually know what they're getting into when they come into it,
Yes.
and you set that direction and vision and things like that, and people come and get added to that. And here is different. Some of it I had to work through my planter mindset to better understand replanting, and in some ways, I think it needed a planter's mindset here, and in
Mm.
some ways, I just needed to add to that some aspects of replanting. You and I had some phone calls through that
Yeah.
season, and because there are things that I didn't do it perfectly. There's things I'd go back and maybe redo a little differently. But and to say all that to say as well, truly, maybe I wouldn't, because there's a part of it where I fumbled through and I made mistakes, or I messed up on how I did things, and it was also an opportunity for those folks to see how I would respond to that.
Mm.
Um, I was confronted with things where I'm like, oh, it's an opportunity to show them as a shepherd leader that there's humility and acknowledgement
Amen.
of, I'm really sorry. I didn't intend to offend you or to upset you in any way. And it was a good opportunity to actually knit some hearts together through the fumbling of the process. But so maybe I wouldn't do it differently, but there's things I might tell somebody else to do differently if given the opportunity to do a little coaching. But reality is, like, the challenges have been really just leadership style. Um, I don't want to say this. I'm not saying this to disparage anybody, but you get a sense that um, folks, they may not have had a good pastor,
Mm.
and so they don't know how to trust, and
Understand.
they don't know how to respond to kind of biblical, pastoral, loving, to visionary kind of leadership in a way that they trust your heart, and they trust that you're walking in step with the Lord and following Him. And so that was a challenge, because to be the bishop or the overseer, when it's kind of used to, like, I'm not sure if I can trust you, or maybe even just a model of leadership style where it was a total consensus. Everybody discussed everything and made every decision together, and that isn't necessarily always the best way to make decisions about everything. And so
Yeah.
there was some tension over how decisions get made, and then obviously the obvious ones like music style and things like that, where it's, or what are you going to do with this ministry or this thing that I love here? Are you going to just throw and chuck it out?
Mm.
And me learning, how do I take these things that are passion projects for them and find where they fit here, and fold them into the mission and vision for this new church plant. And we've been able to do that. Like, things like that were things, big things for them. We've got a local interchurch food pantry that we would donate to and give to, and worry and concern, are we going to stop doing that? Or there's some ladies that meet every other week and crochet prayer shawls, um, and make blankets. And for me, I'm like, I don't get that. To me, it's like, that
Yeah.
where is that going to fit anywhere? But it's like, I'm just not accustomed. I'm not used to that. And so we found a way to make that fit within our prayer and care team that we're developing as a church. And then when people are going through difficult seasons or times, or someone they love and care about those prayer shawls are prayed over. They're put in a bag with a card, and we're given to people so that they would know, hey, this is a symbol, a sign that your church is praying for you, or that you can give to your loved one to let them know your church is praying for them. And it's been a thing where we've even been able to connect some other ladies. They've been able to teach some of our young people how to crochet, and it's just been one of those things where it's like, I didn't know, how is this going to fit, like, where you think you may phase out or shut something down, and then you just got to say, you know what, this is really important to them, and to shepherd them and love them well in a replant is we've got to find the place where that fits, and we've got to begin to give that mission, vision, and value here in this new church. And so we there was a lot of concern over some of those things, and we've had to work through that. The people that we've lost through the process, and there have been some, um, really, it's not even been over the major things. It's
Mm.
been over, you know, more minor things
Secondary, yeah.
like who's going to mow the grass or something like that. It's like, and you're taking something away. No, we don't want to take anything away from you or anything like that, but just sensitivities over the things where people found their identity in something, and when it started to, feel like they were going to lose that, they really just I don't know how to put it in a way that would describe it best, but sometimes it brought to the surface some things where like, well, I'm going to take my toys and go home, and we're like, hey, we love you. Doors are always open if you want to come back when you're ready. And I'm sorry, but and people would not everybody's going to make it through a replant, and
Yeah.
uh, and you want to love them well through it and be patient and let them know the doors are open, and even whether they ever show back up or not. Um, but yeah, it's been a journey. There've been, I mean, just a handful of people that didn't make it through. But you got to know too that you're going to hit some challenges, and not everybody's going to be able to make it through that and stay here. And you just pray they connect with the church and find a faith family somewhere to keep growing in the Lord.
Amen. Yeah, and I think that just like you've well said, that each situation, each replant is so different from the next because I
Yeah,
mean, now I think that there's probably some common themes there as far as like being older congregation, that things are changing for them, so they're going to cling on to, and things that they are familiar with because I mean their body's changing, their friends are changing, and passing, and so all those things and what we would consider as being something that just doesn't seem very important is can be crucially important to them, and how you have to love them. That's a I mean, that's got to course through your blood that you are going to love these people through, this situation and that shepherding situation. Crucially important for replanting. Um,
yeah.
but along the way, then you've been connected to Send, and um, has that tell us about that, and there's ongoing training and coaching that you have through that process.
Yeah, for sure. The obviously you go through the assessment process, which to me, I mean, it was my first foray, my real foray through anything Send, and it was incredibly encouraging and life giving. I was kind of concerned coming from a background that maybe where you get more judgment and more
Mm.
evaluation to find what's wrong with you, that it was going to be a negative experience, like a witch hunt. What's wrong with this guy? And it really wasn't. It was, hey, we care about you and what God's calling you to do, and we want to make sure you're ready and you're prepared. And if there's any areas of your life that need, some time to grow and develop, that you're not put into a situation where it's going to harm you or your family or the ministry. And
Right.
so it was a healthy process to make sure we were ready and we were prepared, and it was incredibly encouraging, life-giving. We were approved. We came back and have been able to go through some of the like the orientation process was encouraging, very very good, to kind of shape the vision and mission for planting and replanting, and really understanding this is a call to missions work truly. And for us now, continued, we're in a process now of really, it's every 2 weeks we're doing a Zoom video call with a group of guys, and going through additional training
Amen.
experiences, and have recently been able to attend a planting lab, or was it, yeah, sending
Yeah,
lab
sending
is what
them.
it's called, yeah. And that was it was great, yeah. So the connection to ongoing just development and training and just camaraderie and brotherhood and encouragement's been good,
That's awesome.
really
Yeah.
good.
Well, you're doing some good work. I know that, when when I've been able to be there that I mean the spirit is good. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, it just feels like a place that, man, this is this is the way it's supposed to be. And
Yeah.
then you've done it with the facility. Just that's exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about, so as far as facility goes, what's kind of the next thing going on there?
Yeah, we did a lot of work, and then you there's probably always more work than there are dollars,
Oh yeah.
and so we had hit that part at some point in time, and have really just been kind of growing our margin, kind of financially, God's blessing, and now it's just tackling one additional project, either things that we didn't get to or didn't complete with the refresh or remodel, and then now you're running. It's a little bit of an older building,
Mhm.
and so we're running into challenges there where behind the gutters, you've got the fascia and water's got in. We had some really
Oh no.
bad torrential storms come through, not that long ago, a couple of weeks to a month ago, and water getting into our new lights we just put in, and then a couple of bathrooms in the back that quit. They weren't flushing right, and you realize you probably got a problem in the line out to the connecting to the sewer at the street that you're gonna have to figure out. And it's just there's parts of it where it's, yeah, we're trying to finish some things up. I'm just here doing some carpet cleaning today, getting ready for Easter Sunday. We're right. That's this coming Sunday. I don't know when you're watching this, but that's when we're recording. And so there's just always things. A little older building. It's a smaller facility, and get to the point where you're starting to feel the pressure of maybe needing to go to two services, which is
Mhm.
exciting, but it's just yeah, a lot of good things happening with the refreshing of the facility and creating more space and doing real ministry. And people come in and they do appreciate the work that's been done here to kind of bring it forward a little bit into today. But at the same time, yeah, you're always running into new additional
Oh yeah.
challenges and issues. It's new for us as a planter. As I was a planter, like the before we did the replant, we didn't have our facility, so we just rented. Now you got a facility, and you're like, oh boy,
Woo!
a whole new set of problems.
Absolutely.
But it's been
Absolutely.
great.
That's good, man. Well, it's exciting to see it and what you're doing. And
Yeah,
so if a church, so you got pastors looking at this, and how can we come alongside? What are some things that maybe, if a church hears the story and says, "Man, how can we help?" What would you tell them?
yeah. I don't. As I think about that, obviously, I don't say this in a trite way, but prayer for sure. We
Of
need we
course.
need just prayer for God to work and continue to bring people in that need the Lord, and at the same time bringing in people that have some spiritual maturity that God leads to be here. And I think part of, obviously, with the association and really our connection, even with Cindy, we were just at the sending lab, is maybe God's given your church a heart to be a sending church, and you're near enough. Maybe there's a family God may be laying on their heart to come this way. There's some gaps we have, obviously, in adult group leading, discipling adults, but primarily we really need some help with our music leadership and worship, and things like that. But and obviously, I mean, there's never a shortage of needs for funds, one time or ongoing, just to continue to breathe life here, because it takes a lot. It really does. And so any type of prayer, people, resources that God may be laying on anybody's heart, I would love to grab lunch, grab coffee, have a conversation, and just unpack more of that. But those are the things we're going through. Just obviously ministry needs and holes of people who need to lead it, who are spiritually mature. We got people who are connecting here at church that haven't been in church in a while, and obviously people who may not even know the Lord yet, that are coming. And but you always need some people who are spiritually mature, and we're doing our job to try and raise them up. But you know
Amen.
that takes time. But yeah,
Absolutely.
so yeah, I mean, it's
Good.
been great. But appreciate just the heart of of you and just your relationship with the churches in our area. And yeah, I would love to meet up and get to know anybody that wants to hear more about the story and what our needs are here at
Amen.
Crossway.
Well, and just like we've talked before, and and I try to carry this message everywhere, is that um, the association is about that partnership, that family, that connectedness, and being able to come alongside. And I know that Send kind of puts it in that category of prayer, participate, which would mean like partnership, and and always know that for anybody listening that um, whatever you have that you can give, whatever that means, time or talents or treasure, or however you want to alliterate it, you're always going to have so much more that you're going to gain. Just like when you go on a mission trip, you come, you're there to help, but at the same time, there's something you're fed, and you grow just as much. And just like you said, it could be some people that are in need of kind of go to that next level, and they could come alongside and be a part of that. So uh, pastors, just be praying about how can you um, be a part of what's going on. And I'm super excited about what Bryan is doing and what's going on. And I think it's going to be a great trophy of grace, as we say, down the road, to know that man, God did something amazing here. So, well, and I'll also have Bryan's contact info that's going to be connected here in this or with this video, so that you'll be able to get in contact with him, or you can contact me, and I will make sure that y'all get connected. So, well, Bryan, we are praying for you, brother. And, of course, you need anything, of course, always give me a call. And for our Crossroads family, thanks for tuning in, and be praying for Bryan for this effort for the many folks that are kind of going to come to know Jesus as a result of this. And we'll see you the next time.